The battle had been raging for 3 standard cycles, and the Calyx Dominion was winning. Their fleet of 200 warships surrounded the mining colony of Vestara 7 like predators circling wounded prey. The colony's defenders, a mixed force of Antari peacekeepers and Vox mercenaries, had been reduced to 47 vessels. Each passing hour brought them closer to complete annihilation. Commander Thessa of the Antari watched her tactical display with mounting despair. Her flagship, the Luminous Dawn, shuddered as another plasma volley struck its shields. The barrier flickered dangerously, showing amber warning lights across every console on the bridge. Around her, crew members worked frantically, their 4 arms moving across controls with practiced efficiency. But even their legendary multitasking abilities couldn't change the mathematics of this engagement. They were simply outgunned, outnumbered, and out of options. "Shield integrity at 23%, her tactical officer reported. His voice remained steady despite the dire situation. The Antari prided themselves on maintaining composure even in the face of certain death. It was a cultural trait that had served them well across 3,000 years of spacefaring civilization. Calyx heavy cruisers are moving into bombardment formation. They're preparing to glass the colony." Thessa's antennae drooped slightly, a gesture of profound sadness that she couldn't quite suppress. 50,000 civilians lived on Vestara 7. Miners, merchants, families who had built lives in the asteroid clusters, rich with rare minerals. They had sent distress calls to every nearby system, but the Calyx had jammed all faster-than-light communications. No help was coming. No one even knew they were dying. The Calyx Dominion didn't take prisoners. They didn't negotiate. They simply swept through systems like a plague, taking what they wanted and destroying everything else. Their ships were massive, angular constructs of dark metal that seemed to absorb light itself. Each vessel bristled with weapons that had been perfected over centuries of conquest. The Calyx had crushed 17 civilizations in the past 200 years. They would crush 18 today. "All ships maintain defensive formation," Thessa transmitted across the fleet channel. "We will hold this line until our shields fail. The colony will have time to evacuate whoever they can to the underground shelters." It wasn't much. The shelters might survive the initial bombardment, but eventually the Calyx would send ground forces. They always did. They liked to be thorough in their exterminations, but every moment of resistance gave those civilians a chance. Perhaps some would survive long enough for eventual rescue, even if it came months or years later. The Calyx flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Eternal Darkness, moved forward through the battlefield. It was 3 times the size of any defending vessel, a monument to destructive power. Its commander, War Prime Kelthax, had personally overseen the destruction of 6 civilized worlds. He considered this mining colony barely worthy of his attention, but the Dominion wanted the rare minerals, and so he would take them. "Begin orbital bombardment sequence," Kelthax ordered. His voice rumbled through his ship's bridge, where subordinates moved with military precision. "Target the colony's power stations first, then the residential sectors. Leave the mining facilities intact until we've extracted everything of value." The dreadnought's main weapons began to glow with building energy. Massive particle cannons capable of cracking a planet's crust charged their devastating payloads. In 30 seconds, they would fire. In 30 seconds, 50,000 lives would begin their final moments. Then something impossible happened. The space between the Calyx fleet and the defenders simply opened. There was no other word for it. Reality tore apart like fabric, revealing something beyond. A swirling vortex of impossible colors spun into existence, accompanied by sensor readings that made no sense whatsoever. Energy signatures spiked off every scale. Gravitational waves rippled outward, causing every ship in the system to rock violently. "Report!" Thessa shouted, gripping her command chair as the luminous dawn bucked like a living creature. "Unknown spatial anomaly," her science officer called out, her 4 hands dancing across multiple screens simultaneously. "It's reading as a wormhole, but the energy requirements are astronomical. No known civilization has this technology. The power output is equivalent to a small star." From the vortex, something emerged. It was a ship, but unlike anything in the galactic database. Where most vessels were either elegant curves or brutal angles, this craft seemed to blend both philosophies into something entirely new. It was roughly triangular, but with flowing lines that suggested both grace and menace. The hull was a deep gray that seemed to shift in the light, and running lights of electric blue traced patterns across its surface. But it was the size that truly shocked everyone watching. The vessel was enormous, easily matching the Calyx dreadnought in length and mass. This wasn't a scout or frigate stumbling into a war zone. This was a capital ship, a vessel built for battle on a massive scale. "Identify that ship," Kelthax demanded. His confidence had wavered for just a moment at the dramatic entrance, but he quickly reasserted his authority. "Scan its weapon systems and defensive capabilities." His tactical officer worked for several seconds, confusion evident in his posture. "War Prime, the scans are being deflected. Their hull is composed of materials I cannot identify. I'm detecting power signatures consistent with fusion reactors, but the configuration is unknown. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but the language doesn't match any in our database." Kelthax growled, a sound that made several junior officers flinch. "One ship. They send one ship against my fleet. Their arrogance will be their extinction." On the luminous dawn, Thessa was receiving similar reports. The unknown vessel had positioned itself directly between the defenders and the Calyx armada. It was broadcasting something, but the computers were struggling to translate. "Keep working on that translation," Thessa ordered. "And someone get me an identification on those hull markings." The ship's exterior bore symbols that were clearly intentional. Large letters ran along its side, sharp and angular. The computer finally processed them, displaying the results on the main screen. UESN Harbinger. United Earth Space Navy, the communications officer read slowly. "Earth. That's in the Galactic Rim territories, isn't it? One of those backwater systems with pre-FTL civilizations. They shouldn't have ships like this. They shouldn't have anything beyond primitive satellites." Thessa's antennae twitched with sudden interest. She had heard rumors, whispers in diplomatic channels, stories of a species called humans who had appeared seemingly from nowhere, trading with Outer Rim colonies. Most dismissed them as another minor species, taking their first stumbling steps into the galactic community. Certainly nothing that could build a warship of this magnitude. The Harbinger completed its positioning, hovering motionless between the two fleets. Then it broadcast again, and this time the translation matrix locked on. "Attention Calyx vessels. This is Captain Alexandra Torres of the United Earth Space Navy vessel Harbinger. You are engaged in an act of aggressive warfare against a civilian population. Under the Interstellar Convention of Armed Conflict, which Earth is a signatory to as of 16 months ago, we are authorized to intervene. You will cease all hostile actions immediately and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning." Silence filled every bridge in the system. The Calyx fleet, which had been moments away from planetary bombardment, held position. The defenders, who had been preparing to die, waited with bated breath. And the Harbinger simply floated there, a single ship facing down 200 warships without apparent concern. Kelthax began to laugh. It started as a low rumble and built into a roaring sound of pure amusement. His bridge crew, sensing their commander's mood, allowed themselves small expressions of mirth as well. "A warning," Kelthax managed between laughs. "They give us a warning. One primitive vessel from a species we've never heard of, and they dare to threaten the Calyx Dominion. He leaned forward in his command throne, his amusement fading into cold menace. Destroy them. I want their hull plating as a trophy. 20 Calyx cruisers broke formation, accelerating toward the Harbinger with deadly intent, their weapons charged, ready to unleash enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. The distance closed rapidly as the cruisers adopted a standard attack pattern, surrounding the unknown vessel from multiple angles. The Harbinger didn't move. It simply waited. The first cruiser opened fire, its plasma cannons launching bolts of superheated matter at relativistic speeds. The other cruisers followed a split second later, creating a web of deadly energy that converged on the human ship from all directions. Every watching eye expected to see the Harbinger destroyed. Even Thessa, who had allowed herself a moment of hope at the appearance of potential reinforcement, felt that hope die. No ship could survive that much concentrated fire. The plasma bolts struck the Harbinger and simply dissipated. Some kind of energy field surrounded the vessel, visible now as a faint shimmer of blue light. The plasma made contact with this barrier and scattered like water hitting hot metal. Not a single shot reached the actual hull. "Impossible," Kelthax's tactical officer whispered. "Their shields aren't just strong, they're multi-layered. I'm reading at least 5 distinct barrier systems, each operating on different frequencies. The total energy output is beyond anything I've ever recorded." The Harbinger responded. Ports opened along its hull, revealing weapon emplacements that had been hidden beneath smooth armor plating. But these weren't the plasma cannons or particle beams common to galactic warfare. These were something else entirely. Brilliant lances of coherent light speared out from the human vessel. They moved at the speed of light itself, which meant there was no dodging, no evasion. The targeting was perfect. Each beam struck a Calyx cruiser with surgical precision, hitting the exact points where their shield generators were located. The cruiser's defensive barriers collapsed instantly. Without shields, the armor underneath was exposed. The human weapons didn't stop firing. The beams intensified, drilling through military-grade hull plating like it was paper. Internal explosions bloomed across each targeted vessel as the beams found reactor cores and ammunition storage. In the space of 8 seconds, 20 Calyx cruisers were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The Harbinger ceased fire. It returned to its motionless hovering, waiting. Every bridge in the system had gone completely silent. Thessa found herself unable to breathe for a moment. Her tactical officer was frantically checking his instruments, convinced they had malfunctioned. 20 warships. Gone. Just gone. Destroyed with a precision and efficiency that bordered on the casual. On the eternal darkness, Kelthax was no longer laughing. His claws had dug into the armrests of his command throne hard enough to gouge the metal. His subordinates waited, terrified to speak, terrified to draw his attention. "Status report," Kelthax finally said, his voice carefully controlled. "The cruisers are completely destroyed, War Prime. The human vessel used directed energy weapons of an unknown type. The beam coherence was perfect, the targeting was instantaneous, and the penetration power exceeded our hull ratings by factors we cannot calculate. Their shield system withstood a coordinated strike from 20 ships without any apparent drain on their power reserves." Kelthax processed this information. He had not achieved his position by being foolish or reckless. A single ship had just demonstrated combat capabilities that exceeded anything in the Dominion's arsenal. This was no primitive species. This was a potential peer adversary, or worse, a superior one. "Open a channel to the human vessel," he ordered. The communications officer worked quickly, establishing a connection. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the Harbinger. The human commander, this Captain Torres, stood at the center of her bridge. She was bipedal, roughly 2 meters tall, with brown skin and dark hair pulled back in a severe style. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and completely without fear. War Prime Kelthax, Torres said, her voice calm and professional. Have you reconsidered your position? Kelthax studied the human. Her bridge crew behind her worked with quiet efficiency. The technology visible on her bridge was sleek, advanced. This was no stolen vessel or lucky prototype. This was standard military hardware for these creatures. He needed information, needed to understand what he was facing. You defend this colony, Kelthax said carefully. What is Earth's interest in this system? Torres smiled, and there was something predatory in that expression. We don't need an interest. We simply don't tolerate bullies who prey on civilians. The galaxy has been operating under certain rules for a long time. You strong take what you want from the weak, and everyone just accepts it as natural law. Well, War Prime, Earth doesn't accept it. We've decided to change the rules. You speak boldly for one ship facing my fleet, Kelthax replied. One ship that just destroyed 20 of yours without breaking a sweat, Torres countered. Want to find out what happens when we actually try? Or would you prefer to withdraw peacefully and report to your superiors that the galaxy just got a lot more complicated? The Harbinger's weapons ports remained open, a clear threat, but the vessel still hadn't moved from its defensive position. They were protecting the colony and the defenders, not launching an aggressive assault. Torres was offering him a way out, a way to retreat without completely losing face. But Kelthax was War Prime of the Calyx Dominion. He had conquered worlds. He had broken civilizations. He would not be intimidated by one ship, no matter how impressive its initial display. All fleet units, Kelthax commanded, converge on the human vessel, maximum firepower, overwhelm their shields through sheer volume. I want nothing left but atoms. The remaining Calyx fleet, 180 warships, began their attack run. They moved in coordinated waves, weapons charging. This wasn't a probing attack or a limited strike. This was total war, the full might of a Dominion battle fleet brought to bear on a single target. On the Harbinger's bridge, Captain Torres watched the approaching armada without any visible concern. She turned to her tactical officer, a man with pale skin and sharp features. Commander Chen, light them up. With pleasure, Captain. The Harbinger had been holding back. What it revealed now made the previous display seem like a warning shot. The entire vessel seemed to come alive with weapon emplacements. Dozens of the laser arrays, now identified as high-energy pulse lasers, swiveled to track targets. But that was just the beginning. Missile ports opened along the flanks, launching salvos of projectiles that accelerated to incredible speeds. These weren't simple explosives. Each missile carried its own targeting AI and maneuvering thrusters, making them nearly impossible to intercept. Railgun batteries, weapons that used electromagnetic force to launch solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed, added their own devastating fire. And from the forward section, something entirely new emerged. A weapon that the Antari scientists would later struggle to classify opened fire. It projected a field of distorted space-time, effectively creating a gravitational shear that ripped through the first wave of attacking Calyx ships. The vessels didn't explode. They simply came apart, torn into component atoms by forces that overwhelmed their structural integrity on a fundamental level. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The Harbinger moved through the attacking fleet like a dancer, its maneuvering capabilities far exceeding anything its size should allow. Every shot from the human vessel found its target. Every missile struck home. The railgun projectiles punched through multiple ships in a single shot, the sheer kinetic energy carrying them through hull after hull. The Calyx fleet, trained and disciplined, tried every tactic they knew. They attempted coordinated strikes, focusing hundreds of weapons on single points of the Harbinger's shields. They tried to overwhelm the point defense systems with missile swarms. They even attempted ramming maneuvers, willing to sacrifice ships if it meant taking down this impossible adversary. Nothing worked. The Harbinger's shields held against everything they threw at it. Its point defense systems, a network of smaller laser turrets, intercepted every missile and fighter craft that approached. Its main weapons fired with mechanical precision, each shot calculated for maximum effect. When it ended, 163 more Calyx vessels had been destroyed. The remaining 17, including the Eternal Darkness, had their engines disabled and their weapon systems offline. They drifted helplessly, completely at the Harbinger's mercy. The human vessel moved through the debris field, coming to a stop directly in front of the Calyx flagship. The weapon ports remained open, but the firing had ceased. Captain Torres's face appeared on every surviving Calyx view screen. Her expression was serious, but there was no triumph in it, no gloating. She looked like someone who had just completed an unpleasant but necessary task. "War Prime Kelthax," she said. "Your fleet is neutralized. You have two choices. You can accept that you've lost and order your surviving ships to surrender, or you can continue fighting and I'll reduce you to scrap. Choose now." In his command throne, Kelthax stared at the human commander. Everything he had known about warfare, about power, about the natural order of the galaxy, had just been shattered. His fleet was gone. Centuries of Calyx military dominance had been erased in less than 5 minutes by a single vessel from a species no one had even heard of 6 months ago. "I surrender," he said, the words tasting like ash. "The Calyx fleet surrenders." The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire through dry grass. Within hours, every major civilization knew what had happened at Vestara 7. A single human warship had engaged and defeated a full Calyx Dominion battle fleet. The implications were staggering, impossible to fully grasp. The Calyx, who had been considered one of the 3 most powerful military forces in known space, had been crushed by a species that most civilizations didn't even know existed. Commander Thessa found herself aboard the Harbinger 3 hours after the battle concluded. Her shuttle had docked with the human vessel, and she now walked through corridors that hummed with barely contained power. The interior was immaculate, all clean lines and efficient design. Human crew members moved past her with purpose, nodding politely but not stopping to stare. They wore uniforms of dark blue and gray, with rank insignia she was still learning to recognize. Her escort, a young human lieutenant named Sarah Kim, guided her through the ship with professional courtesy. The lieutenant was shorter than the captain, perhaps 1.7 meters, with Asian features and short black hair. She moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in her environment. "Captain Torres is waiting for you in the conference room," Lieutenant Kim explained. "She's eager to establish formal communications with the Antari peacekeeping forces. We apologize for the delay, but we had to secure the Calyx prisoners and coordinate with the colony leadership." Thessa's antennae twitched with curiosity. "I must ask, Lieutenant, how many ships does Earth have like the Harbinger?" Kim smiled, an expression that Thessa was learning to read as amusement. "I'm afraid that's classified information, Commander, but I can tell you that the Harbinger isn't our newest or most advanced vessel. We've been building our fleet for 20 years, ever since we discovered we weren't alone in the universe." 20 years. Thessa had to consciously prevent her antennae from drooping in shock. The Antari had taken 300 years to develop their first FTL-capable warship after achieving faster-than-light travel. These humans had gone from primitive to peer-level military power in 2 decades. It was unprecedented. It was terrifying. The conference room was spacious, with a large oval table and view screens covering one wall. Captain Torres stood as Thessa entered, offering the human gesture of an extended hand. Thessa had studied human customs during the short shuttle ride and knew to grasp the hand firmly. "Commander Thessa," Torres said warmly, "thank you for coming. Please sit. Would you like something to drink? We have water, various juices, and I believe our replicator can handle most basic Intari beverages. Water would be acceptable, Thessa replied, settling into a chair that adjusted automatically to accommodate her body structure. She noticed several other humans in the room, including a man with commander's insignia who had been at the tactical station during the battle, and a woman with civilian clothing who carried herself with scientific curiosity. Torres poured water from a pitcher, the simple gesture somehow putting Thessa more at ease. Let me introduce my senior staff. This is Commander James Chen, my tactical officer, Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, our chief science officer and xenocultural specialist, and Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rivera, who handles communications and diplomatic protocols. Each human nodded as they were introduced. They all had different skin tones, facial features, and body types. Thessa had read that humans were a remarkably diverse species, despite coming from a single planet. It was another unusual characteristic. I suppose you have questions, Torres said, settling into her own chair. We certainly have many for you, but I imagine yours are more pressing given the circumstances. Thessa appreciated the directness. Yes, Captain. The galaxy needs to understand what happened here today. The Calyx will report this engagement to their high command. Every major power will want to know about Earth's military capabilities. There will be fear, and possibly aggression born from that fear. You've changed the balance of power with a single battle. Torres nodded seriously. We're aware of the implications. Earth hasn't been hiding exactly, but we have been careful about revealing our full capabilities. We've had observation posts throughout the galaxy for 15 years. We've studied your civilizations, your politics, your wars. We wanted to understand what we were getting into before announcing ourselves. Spying on us, Thessa said flatly. Intelligence gathering, Chen corrected, though without heat. The same thing every spacefaring civilization does. The Intari have reconnaissance drones in 7 systems outside your territory. The Vox Information Service has agents embedded in half the trading posts in this sector. Everyone spies on everyone. We were just better at not getting caught. Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. Commander, we need you to understand something fundamental about humanity. We're not conquerors. We don't want to build an empire. But we've studied galactic history, and we've seen a pattern we find deeply troubling. The strong prey on the weak. Civilizations like the Calyx rampage through space, destroying anyone who can't defend themselves, and the more established powers just accept it as the natural order. That's not acceptable to us. So you appoint yourselves as galactic peacekeepers? Thessa asked. The guardians who decide when intervention is necessary? No, Torres said firmly. We're not trying to rule the galaxy or impose human values on everyone else. But we are going to defend civilian populations from aggressive warfare. The Calyx were about to glass a mining colony. 50,000 non-combatants would have died. We're not going to stand by and let that happen, not when we have the power to stop it. Thessa considered this. It was an idealistic position. The kind of moral stance that younger civilizations often took before reality ground down their principles. But the Harbinger was very real. Human military power was very real. And they had just proven they were willing to use it. Tell me about Earth, Thessa said. Help me understand your species. Torres exchanged glances with her officers, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then she nodded and activated the view screen. An image appeared, showing a blue and green planet that was immediately recognizable as life-bearing. Clouds swirled across the surface, and Thessa could see continents and oceans. Earth, Torres said softly, and there was love in her voice. Our home, a single planet in an unremarkable star system, but it's produced a species that survived everything nature could throw at us. We evolved as persistence hunters, Commander. Our ancestors ran their prey to exhaustion across African plains. We're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most naturally armed, But we don't quit. We don't give up. And we learn from every challenge. More images appeared. Ancient human structures, cities that had risen and fallen, technology progressing from simple tools to spaceflight, wars, so many wars, humans fighting each other with increasing levels of destruction. "We're not perfect," Dr. Okonkwo added. "We've made terrible mistakes. We've fought wars that killed millions. We've nearly destroyed our own planet through environmental damage, but we learned, we grew. When we finally achieved global unity 50 years ago, it was because we realized that our survival depended on cooperation." "And when you discovered faster-than-light travel?" Thessa asked. Chen took over the explanation. "We found ancient ruins on Mars, our neighboring planet, a research station from a civilization that died out millions of years ago. In their archives, we found the principles of FTL travel and other technologies. It was like finding a treasure map to the stars. We reverse-engineered everything, adapted it, improved it. Within 10 years, we had our first prototype FTL drive. Within 15, we had sent out exploration vessels. And found the galaxy wasn't as friendly as we'd hoped," Rivera added. "Our first contact was with a Vox trading ship. They were polite enough, but we quickly learned that humanity was seen as potential prey. Young species. Technologically primitive, with a valuable planet. We were targets." Torres stood and walked to the view screen, touching the image of Earth with obvious affection. "So we made a decision. We would develop our military capabilities in secret while maintaining a public facade of being a minor trading partner. We established commerce with outer rim colonies, traded basic goods, and appeared harmless. Meanwhile, we were building ships like the Harbinger. We were developing weapons that could stand against anything the galaxy could throw at us. We were preparing." "For what?" Thessa asked. "For the day when we would step onto the galactic stage properly," Torres replied. "We knew we couldn't hide forever. Eventually, someone would discover Earth or push too hard at one of our trading posts. We needed to be ready to defend ourselves. But we also decided that when we did reveal ourselves, it would be while doing something worthwhile, saving lives, stopping an atrocity, showing the galaxy that humans stand for something." Thessa absorbed all of this. It explained so much, but raised even more questions. "Your technology, those weapons, your ships, they're beyond anything we've encountered. How?" Dr. Okonkwo smiled. "We cheat, Commander. Humans are very good at thinking laterally, at approaching problems from unexpected angles. Take our laser weapons, for example. Most galactic civilizations use plasma cannons because they assumed lasers couldn't be made efficient enough for ship-to-ship combat. The energy requirements seemed prohibitive, and atmospheric diffusion made them less effective. But we focused on them anyway because lasers have key advantages. They're light-speed weapons, so there's no dodging them. They're precise, so there's no wasted energy. We just had to solve the engineering challenges. We developed quantum cascade lasers with perfect coherence over unlimited distances," Chen added. "We use fusion reactors running on hydrogen-boron reactions that are clean and incredibly efficient. Our ships carry enough fuel to operate for years without refueling. And our shield technology uses rotating frequency modulation to dissipate incoming fire across multiple energy bands. Every system on this ship represents human innovation, taking what we learned from that ancient archive and pushing it in directions no one else considered." "You're describing a complete paradigm shift in military technology," Thessa said, her mind racing through the implications. "Every established military doctrine becomes obsolete. The Calyx built their fleet around massive ships with heavy armor and overwhelming plasma weaponry. Your approach makes all of that irrelevant." "Not irrelevant," Torres corrected. "Just insufficient. And yes, we understand that we've disrupted the established order. That's why we need to talk about what happens next." She returned to her seat, her expression turning serious. "Commander, Earth is going to make a formal announcement to the Galactic Council within the next week. We're going to reveal ourselves as a major military power and declare our intention to join the Council as a full-member civilization. We're going to propose new treaties regarding civilian protection during warfare. And we're going to back up everything we say with the very clear demonstration that we have the strength to enforce our position. The Council will never accept this, Thessa said immediately. The major powers will see you as a threat. They'll form alliances against you. You could trigger a galactic war. Or we could trigger a galactic peace, Rivera countered. Right now, the big civilizations maintain their positions through military might and the threat of force. The Calyx, the Vrex Collective, the Novan Empire, they all operate on the principle that strength equals authority. Earth is about to change that calculus. We're stronger than any of them, and we're offering protection to smaller civilizations who've been living in fear. Torres leaned forward, her eyes intense. Commander, I need to be completely honest with you. The Harbinger isn't alone out here. We have 17 ships of similar capability in this sector alone. Earth has a fleet of 300 warships, each one capable of matching or exceeding the Harbinger's performance. We've built shipyards and hidden systems throughout the galaxy. We have manufacturing capacity that would take the Antari Confederacy 50 years to match. We're not bluffing and we're not going away. The silence that followed was profound. Thessa felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a full battle fleet. Humanity hadn't just developed military parity with the galactic powers. They had achieved overwhelming superiority, and they'd done it in secret while everyone else was looking the other way. Why tell me this? Thessa finally asked. Why reveal your full strength to me? Because we need allies, Torres said simply. The Antari Confederacy has a reputation for fairness and diplomatic integrity. Your civilization has mediated peace agreements across dozens of systems. You're respected by most of the galactic community. If the Antari endorse humanity's entry into the Council, others will follow. If they speak in support of our proposed treaties, they'll have weight. You want us to vouch for you, Thessa said. We want you to stand with us, Torres corrected, to help build a better galaxy where might doesn't automatically make right, where civilian populations don't live in constant fear of the next Calyx raid, where smaller civilizations can thrive without becoming vassals to larger powers. We think the Antari want those things too. Thessa sat back. Her four hands folded in thought. Everything Torres said aligned with Antari values. The Confederacy had long advocated for stronger protections for civilians and peaceful species. But they'd never had the military strength to enforce such principles against powers like the Calyx. They'd been forced to work within the existing system, making incremental changes and hoping diplomacy would be enough. Now these humans were offering something else, not just ideals, but the power to make them reality. I will need to report all of this to the Confederacy Council, Thessa said carefully. They will need to make the final decision about any alliance or endorsement. Of course, Torres agreed. We wouldn't expect anything less. Take all the time you need. But Commander, while you're deciding, I want you to see something. She manipulated a control and the view screen changed. It showed the mining colony of Vestara 7, intact and whole. Rescue ships were landing, bringing supplies and medical aid. The civilian population was emerging from their shelters, looking up at the sky where their saviors had appeared. We could have left after the battle, Torres said quietly, declared victory and moved on. But the colony needs help recovering. They need new power generators to replace the ones damaged in the fighting. They need medical supplies and trauma counselors. They need to know they're not forgotten. So we're staying. The Harbinger and 3 other Earth vessels will remain in this system for the next 2 weeks, providing assistance and protection until the colony is stable. More images appeared. Human crew members working alongside colony residents to repair damaged structures. Dr. Okonkwo and her team providing medical care, engineers helping to restore the mining equipment. It was the work of peacekeepers and humanitarian workers, not conquerors. "This is who we are," Torres said. "This is what Earth stands for. We fight when we have to, and we protect those who can't protect themselves. We're not asking the Antari to trust us blindly. We're asking you to judge us by our actions." Thessa looked at the images, at the hope on the faces of the colonists, at the humans working tirelessly to help. She thought about the battle, about how the Harbinger could have destroyed the Calyx fleet entirely, but had instead disabled them and accepted their surrender. She thought about Torres's offer of alliance, made with honesty and directness rather than manipulation or threats. "I will recommend that the Confederacy Council meet with your diplomatic representatives," Thessa said finally. "I cannot promise what they will decide, but I can promise they will give your proposals serious consideration. What you've done here today, Captain, has saved 50,000 lives and changed the galaxy. The Antari will not ignore that." Torres smiled, relief evident in her expression. "Thank you, Commander. That's all we can ask for." They spent the next hour discussing practical matters. The transfer of Calyx prisoners to Antari custody for war crimes trials, the coordination of relief efforts at the colony, the exchange of communication protocols and diplomatic frequencies. It was mundane work, but necessary. When Thessa finally prepared to return to the luminous dawn, Torres walked her to the shuttle bay personally. The captain's presence drew respectful nods from every crew member they passed. "One more question, Captain," Thessa said as they reached her shuttle. "The Calyx will want revenge. They won't accept this defeat quietly. Are you prepared for what comes next?" Torres's expression hardened slightly. "The Calyx Dominion has three choices. They can accept that the rules have changed and modify their behavior accordingly. They can attempt diplomatic resolution through the Galactic Council, or they can try to attack Earth directly and discover that the Harbinger was just the beginning of what we can field. We're hoping for one of the first two options, but we're prepared for the third. And if other powers form a coalition against you, if they decide that humanity's emergence is too threatening to tolerate, then we remind them why it's called humanity, fuck yeah," Torres replied with a grin that was all teeth. "We didn't build 300 warships because we were feeling optimistic about galactic politics, Commander. We built them because we'd studied history and knew that the established powers wouldn't welcome change easily. If they want a war, they'll discover that humans are really, really good at warfare. We've been practicing on each other for 10,000 years. Thessa entered her shuttle, the door closing behind her. As the craft detached and accelerated back toward the luminous dawn, she watched the Harbinger through the viewports. The massive warship floated serenely in space, its hull illuminated by the system's star. It looked almost peaceful, beautiful even. But Thessa now knew what destructive power those elegant lines concealed. The galaxy had just discovered that it had a new apex predator, a species that combined technological innovation with military prowess and, most unusually, a sense of moral purpose. The old powers would have to adapt or be swept aside. The smaller civilizations would have new hope for survival, and the Calyx Dominion had just learned that they were no longer the most dangerous force in known space. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime was a monument to diplomatic achievement. Built 5,000 years ago by the first three spacefaring civilizations to establish peaceful contact, it had grown over the millennia into a massive structure that housed representatives from 47 member species. The Central Assembly Hall featured a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time map of known space, with each member civilization's territory marked in their chosen color. Today, that hall was more crowded than it had been in 2 centuries. Every council member was present, along with their full diplomatic entourages. Observer species who normally sent minor functionaries had dispatched their highest officials. Even civilizations who had never shown interest in council proceedings had representatives in attendance. The news from Vestara 7 had ensured maximum attendance. Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth stood in the designated speaker's position at the center of the hall, surrounded by representatives arranged in concentric circles that rose toward the ceiling. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 1.6 meters tall, but she carried herself with confidence that made her seem larger. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and her dark suit was simple but elegant. Behind her stood a small delegation of human officials, including military advisors and scientific experts. The chamber had been in session for 3 hours, and the questions were becoming increasingly hostile. "You admit to spying on our civilizations for 15 years, Council Member Vexar of the Novan Empire declared, his scaled face flushed with anger. "You infiltrated our space, observed our military capabilities, and gathered intelligence while pretending to be harmless traitors. This is an act of espionage on an unprecedented scale." Vasquez remained calm, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "Council Member Vexar, we observed from a distance and engaged in standard intelligence gathering that every spacefaring civilization practices. We did not sabotage, steal classified materials, or interfere with your internal affairs. We simply watched and learned. If the Novan Empire finds this objectionable, perhaps they should explain their 12 reconnaissance outposts currently operating in Intari space without permission." A murmur ran through the chamber. Vexar's scales darkened further, a sign of embarrassment among his species. He sat back down without responding. Council Speaker Thalan, an elderly Entari who had held the position for 30 years, raised one of his 4 hands for silence. "Let us address the core issue. Ambassador Vasquez, humanity has revealed military capabilities that exceed those of any single member civilization. Your vessel, the Harbinger, defeated a Calyx battle fleet with apparent ease. Intelligence reports suggest you have hundreds of similar ships. This represents a fundamental shift in the galactic balance of power. The Council needs to understand your intentions." Vasquez nodded respectfully. "Speaker Thalan, our intentions are exactly what we stated at Vestara 7. Earth seeks to join the Galactic Council as a full member civilization. We want to engage in peaceful commerce, cultural exchange, and diplomatic cooperation. We also intend to use our military capabilities to protect civilian populations from aggressive warfare. You cannot appoint yourselves as galactic police," Archon Kellis of the Vrex Collective interjected. She was a crystalline being whose body refracted light in complex patterns. "The Council has established procedures for intervention in conflicts. Individual civilizations do not have the authority to engage in military action without Council approval." "With respect, Archon, those procedures have failed repeatedly," Vasquez replied. "The Calyx Dominion has destroyed 17 civilizations in the past 2 centuries. The Council has issued statements of concern and imposed minor economic sanctions, but no meaningful action has been taken. Those 17 dead civilizations would prefer that someone had intervened with military force." "The Calyx operate within their own territory," another Council member objected. "They have not attacked Council member worlds." "They attack civilian populations who have no means of defense," Vasquez countered, her voice hardening. "They glass planets and commit genocide for the sake of resources. Earth's position is simple. We will not tolerate such actions regardless of whose territory they occur in. We're not asking permission. We're informing you of our policy." The chamber erupted in multiple conversations. Some Council members appeared shocked by the directness of the human position. Others seemed calculating, measuring the implications. A few, Thessa among them, showed expressions that might have been satisfaction. War Prime Kelthax sat in a special defendants section, his presence required as the Council debated charges of war crimes. He watched the human ambassador with undisguised hatred. His fleet had been confiscated, his subordinates were facing trial, and his personal honor was destroyed. all because of these upstart humans who had appeared from nowhere. The Calix Dominion rejects these proceedings, he declared, standing despite not having been recognized. We were engaged in legitimate military operations within space we have claimed. The human intervention was illegal and unprovoked. We demand reparations for our destroyed vessels and the immediate withdrawal of human forces from all territories. Vasquez turned to face him directly. War Prime, you were preparing to bombard a civilian colony. Your own combat logs, which we've provided to the Council, show your targeting computers locked onto residential areas and schools. You have no legal standing here, and you have no moral authority. The only reason you're alive is because we accepted your surrender rather than finishing you off. I'd recommend gratitude over demands. Kelthax's claws extended involuntarily, a threat display. 2 Antari security officers moved closer to him, ready to intervene if needed. He forced himself back under control and sat down, but his eyes promised violence. Speaker Thalon addressed the chamber again. We must vote on Earth's petition for council membership. However, I propose we first hear from civilizations who have directly interacted with humanity. Commander Thessa, you were present at Vestara 7. Please share your observations. Thessa stood, moving to the speaker's position, as Vasquez stepped aside. The human ambassador gave her a subtle nod of encouragement as they passed. Thessa activated the central display, showing footage from the battle that her ship's sensors had recorded. I witnessed the engagement at Vestara 7 from the bridge of my ship, Thessa began. We were defending the colony with 47 vessels against a Calix fleet of 200. We were losing. We had accepted that we would die buying time for civilian evacuations. Then the Harbinger arrived. The footage played across the dome overhead. The entire council chamber could see the human vessel emerge from its wormhole, position itself defensively, and issue its warning. They watched the Calix attack and the devastating response. The Harbinger destroyed 20 ships in 8 seconds, Thessa continued. When the full Calix fleet attacked, it took less than 5 minutes for the battle to end. But what impressed me more than their military power was their restraint. The Harbinger could have annihilated every Calix vessel. Instead, they disabled them and accepted their surrender. After the battle, Captain Torres and her crew provided humanitarian assistance to the colony. They didn't demand payment or territorial concessions. They simply helped. She paused, letting her words carry weight. I have spent the past week aboard the Harbinger and meeting with human diplomats. I've studied their history, their technology, and their culture. What I've learned is that humanity emerged on a world they call a death world, a planet with extreme environmental challenges. They evolved as persistence hunters who succeeded through stubbornness and adaptation rather than natural advantages. This history has shaped their entire civilization. More images appeared overhead. Earth in all its blue-green beauty. Humans throughout their history, building cities and developing technology. The archaeological dig on Mars, where they discovered FTL principles. Their hidden shipyards where vessels like the Harbinger were constructed. Humanity studied us for 15 years before revealing themselves, Thessa said. They learned our languages, our cultures, our politics. They identified the problems plaguing our galaxy, the conflicts that we've accepted as inevitable, and they decided they would not accept them. They built a fleet specifically designed to counter the military doctrines of aggressive civilizations like the Calix. They developed weapons that make traditional warfare obsolete, and they did all of this while maintaining trade relations that showed them to be peaceful and trustworthy. Council member Vexar interrupted again. You advocate for them because they saved your life. Your objectivity is compromised. They saved 50,000 civilian lives, Thessa corrected sharply. And yes, they saved mine and my crew as well. But my recommendation is based on careful analysis, not gratitude. The reality is this: humanity is now the most powerful military force in known space. We can either accept them as allies and work with them to build a better galactic order, or we can treat them as enemies and face the consequences. I know which option serves the Antari Confederacy's interests. She returned to her seat, and Speaker Thalen called on several other representatives to speak. Trade partners who had worked with humanity over the years testified to their reliability and honesty. Scientific experts discussed the revolutionary nature of human technology. Military analysts presented sobering assessments of what a conflict with Earth would entail. After 2 more hours of testimony and debate, Thalen called for a vote on Earth's membership petition. The voting system displayed each council member's decision in real time. Vasquez watched the tally climb, her expression carefully neutral despite her racing heart. The final count was 34 in favor, 11 against, 2 abstentions. Earth's petition passed by a comfortable margin. Let it be recorded, Speaker Thalen announced formally, that on this date, the Galactic Council accepts humanity of Earth as a full member civilization with all rights and responsibilities thereunto. Ambassador Vasquez, on behalf of the Council, I welcome you. The chamber filled with a mixture of applause, formal acknowledgement gestures from various species, and stony silence from those who had voted against. Vasquez bowed respectfully to the Speaker and to the assembled council members. Thank you, Speaker Thalen. Earth accepts this membership with the commitment to uphold the Council's principles and contribute to galactic peace and prosperity. We look forward to working with all member civilizations. But the session was far from over. The next item on the agenda was humanity's proposed treaty regarding civilian protection during warfare. This document, which Vasquez and her team had spent months preparing, laid out strict rules about acceptable military targets, civilian evacuation procedures, and consequences for war crimes. These proposals are too restrictive, Archon Kellis objected immediately. Warfare has necessities. Civilian casualties, while regrettable, are sometimes unavoidable. Unavoidable and deliberate are different things, Vasquez replied. Our proposed treaty doesn't forbid all civilian casualties. It forbids the deliberate targeting of non-combatants and requires reasonable efforts to minimize collateral damage. These aren't radical concepts. They're basic standards of civilized behavior. And who enforces these standards? Vexar demanded. Will Earth play judge and executioner across the galaxy? The Council enforces them, Vasquez answered. We propose establishing a joint military force drawn from all member civilizations, tasked with responding to violations. Earth will contribute ships and personnel, but we won't act unilaterally. The Council will vote on interventions, and forces will operate under Council authority. This proposal generated intense discussion. Some Council members saw it as a genuine attempt at collective security. Others suspected it was a mechanism for human control. The debate stretched on for hours, with various amendments and modifications proposed. Finally, a compromise version of the treaty was put to a vote. It passed with 29 in favor, 16 against, and 2 abstentions. The margin was narrower than the membership vote, but it still represented a fundamental shift in galactic law. As the session concluded, Vasquez was immediately surrounded by diplomats seeking private meetings, trade discussions, and alliance negotiations. She handled each with professional grace, scheduling appointments and exchanging diplomatic pleasantries. But she noticed one figure hanging back, waiting until the crowd thinned. War Prime Kelthax approached, his posture radiating barely controlled fury. 2 Antari guards stayed close, hands near their weapons. Vasquez regarded him calmly, showing no fear despite being physically much smaller than the Calyx warrior. You have humiliated my people, Kelthax said quietly. You have destroyed our fleet, imprisoned our warriors, and turned the galaxy against us. The Calyx Dominion will not forget this. Good, Vasquez replied simply. We want you to remember. We want every aggressive civilization to remember what happened at Vestara 7. The galaxy's bullies just met someone who bullies back, and we're not going anywhere." "You speak of restraint and protection," Kelthax growled, "but you're just another predator claiming moral authority. Eventually, your true nature will show." Vasquez stepped closer, forcing Kelthax to look down at her. Despite the size difference, her presence seemed larger than his. "War Prime, let me tell you something about human nature. We're descended from predators, yes. Apex predators who hunted the African plains. But we're also descended from prey. Our ancestors were hunted by things bigger and stronger than them. We know what it's like to be vulnerable." "That's why we care about protecting civilians. Because we remember when we were the ones who needed protection." She gestured toward the now empty council chamber. "The galaxy has operated on the principle that might makes right for thousands of years. Civilizations like yours have taken advantage of that principle to commit atrocities. Well, we have the might now, and we're saying that's not right. You can adapt to the new order, or you can be left behind. Your choice." Kelthax stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. The guards escorted him out, and Vasquez finally allowed herself to take a deep breath. Her deputy, Marcus Rivera, approached with a concerned expression. "That was risky, Ambassador, confronting him directly like that." "He needed to understand where we stand," Vasquez replied. "And honestly, Marcus, I meant every word. We didn't build this fleet and come to the council just to make friends. We came to change things." "Well, we've certainly done that," Rivera said with a slight smile. "The ambassador from the Antari Confederacy wants to discuss a formal alliance. The Vox Information Service is requesting intelligence-sharing protocols, and at least 7 smaller civilizations have already filed requests for protection treaties. We're going to be very busy." "That's what we signed up for," Vasquez said. "Let's get to work." 6 weeks later, Captain Alexandra Torres stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest orbital station, watching construction crews complete the final sections. The station was massive, designed to serve as the hub for Earth's diplomatic and military operations in this sector. Dozens of ships moved around it, both human vessels and those from newly allied civilizations. Commander Chen joined her at the viewport, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He offered her one, and she accepted gratefully. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the work continue. "The Antari signed the Mutual Defense Treaty yesterday," Chen finally said. "That brings our total allied civilizations to 12, with 19 more in negotiation." "Good," Torres replied. "The more stand with us, the harder it will be for the old powers to push back. How are the Calyx behaving?" "Quiet. Too quiet. Intelligence suggests they're recalling their scattered fleets and consolidating around their core systems. Could be defensive posturing, or they could be preparing something." Torres sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "They'll test us again eventually. Species like the Calyx don't change easily. They'll want to prove that Vestara 7 was a fluke, that they're still a force to be feared." "Will they?" Chen asked. "Fear us? They already do. But yes, they'll test us. And when they do, we'll be ready. The Harbinger has 3 sister ships now, with 5 more under construction. We're not just matching galactic military capabilities anymore. We're exceeding them by wider margins every day." Chen nodded, then asked the question that had been on his mind. "Do you think we're doing the right thing? Playing galactic protector? Some people back home are worried we're overextending, getting involved in conflicts that aren't ours." Torres turned to face him directly. "James, I was born on Earth during the Unity Wars. I was 6 years old when the fighting finally stopped. I remember hiding in shelters while cities burned above us. I remember my father never coming home because his transport was shot down over the Pacific. I remember thinking that maybe this was just how the universe worked. Violence, death, suffering, with no way to stop it." She looked back out at the stars. "But we did stop it. Humans figured out how to live together, how to build something better. And now we're out here, and we find the same old patterns. The strong preying on the weak, civilizations being destroyed because they can't defend themselves. Well, we can defend them. We have the power to say, no more. How could we not use it? Because power corrupts, Chen replied. Because today's protector becomes tomorrow's tyrant. History shows us that pattern too. Then we stay vigilant, Torres said firmly. We set up checks and balances. We make sure we're accountable not just to Earth's government, but to the civilizations we're protecting. We build alliances where everyone has a voice, not an empire where we dictate terms. We remember that we're doing this to help, not to rule. And if we ever lose sight of that, we hope someone has the courage to stand up and remind us. She smiled slightly. Besides, humanity has one advantage in all this. We're stubborn. We don't give up. If we commit to being the good guys, we'll work damn hard to live up to that commitment. It's just how we're wired. Chen raised his coffee cup. To stubbornness, then. Torres clinked her cup against his. To stubbornness, and to humanity's place in the stars. Across the galaxy, the effects of Earth's emergence continued to ripple outward. Smaller civilizations who had lived in fear for generations suddenly had hope. Aggressive powers reconsidered their expansion plans in light of the new military reality. The Galactic Council found itself actually enforcing its resolutions for the first time in centuries, backed by human warships that could make their decisions meaningful. On Vestara 7, the mining colony had been rebuilt and expanded. A memorial stood in the central plaza, commemorating the defense of the colony and honoring those who had died in the initial Calyx assault. But it also celebrated the arrival of the Harbinger and the humans who had proven that help could come from the most unexpected places. Children played in parks that had been rebuilt with human assistance. Markets bustled with trade from a dozen species. The population had grown as refugees from other conflicts arrived, seeking safety under Earth's protective presence. The colony had become a symbol of what the galaxy could be when someone was willing to fight for what was right. In the Calyx core systems, War Prime Kelthax addressed the Dominion's High Command. He presented his analysis of human capabilities and his recommendations for how the Dominion should respond. Some advocated for peaceful coexistence, others demanded preparations for revenge. The debate would continue for years, shaping the Calyx's future relationship with the new galactic order. But across the galaxy, one thing was certain. Humanity had arrived, and the old ways were dying. A species that had climbed from a single planet to peer-level power in 20 years was not to be dismissed or ignored. A civilization that combined technological innovation with moral purpose and backed both with overwhelming military force had fundamentally altered the galactic equation. The humans had a saying, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." The galaxy was learning what that meant. Earth spoke with diplomatic politeness and cultural respect. But behind every human ambassador stood ships like the Harbinger, weapons that could rewrite the rules of warfare, and a species that had proven they would use that power to protect the innocent. The strong no longer had free rein to prey on the weak. The bullies had discovered that someone would stand up to them. And 50,000 grateful colonists on Vestara 7 represented the first of countless lives that would be saved by humanity's stubborn refusal to accept that might made right. In the darkness of space, human vessels patrolled newly established routes, their crews alert for signs of aggression or piracy. In council chambers across civilized space, human diplomats worked to build consensus and forge alliances. In laboratories and shipyards, human engineers continued to push the boundaries of what was possible. Earth had shocked the galaxy. Now they were reshaping it. And they were just getting started. The old powers could adapt or be left behind. The smaller civilizations could thrive under new protections. The galaxy would learn that a species called humanity, who had survived everything their own brutal planet could throw at them, who had fought and bled and persevered across 10,000 years of history, who had reached for the stars with determination and hope, were not going to accept the galaxy as it was. They were going to make it better, whether the galaxy liked it or not, because that's what humans did. They looked at impossible problems and refused to quit until they found solutions. They faced overwhelming odds and persisted until they found a way to win. They saw suffering and injustice and said, "Not anymore." The galaxy had been shocked by humanity's military might, but it would be transformed by their unwillingness to accept the status quo, their insistence that civilization could mean something more than survival of the strongest, and their stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better than today. That was the real power Earth brought to the stars, not just warships and weapons, but hope. The hope that things could change, that protection was possible, that someone would stand up for what was right. The hope that humanity represented had started to spread, and it would not be stopped.